"Uncle, I know how to save your daughter," said the poor boy to the millionaire. Despair was written all over Eduardo Mendonça's face. The man known for his tech empire and his firm stance in business was now breaking down in tears as doctors rushed in all directions. His only daughter, Isabella, just 7 years old, had been hospitalized with mysterious symptoms that left the country's top specialists clueless. That's when he felt a light touch on his arm. Turning around, he saw a boy who couldn't have been more than 14. He wore a faded Bahia soccer t-shirt, worn-out denim shorts and flip-flops. But his eyes shone with a disconcerting intensity. "You're the father of the girl in room 507, right?" asked the boy, with a strong accent from the Reconcavo Baiano. Eduardo frowned, ready to call security. How did that boy know where his daughter was? "Uncle, I know how to save your daughter," said the boy before Eduardo could answer. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" Eduardo responded, suspicious. "My name is Gabriel. I work here. I mean, not officially. I do odd jobs for Donna Zephyr from housekeeping. But I hear things, I see things, and I know what's wrong with your daughter." Eduardo looked around for security, but something in the boy's gaze made him hesitate. "Your daughter passed out during a school trip to the botanical garden after drinking water from a bottle that wasn't hers, right?" Gabriel continued. The businessman froze. That detail had not been made public. Only he, the driver, and the doctors knew about it. "How do you—" And now she's having a fever that comes and goes, rashes on her legs that appear and disappear, and the doctors think it's autoimmune. But it's not, Gabriel completed with disturbing confidence. Eduardo grabbed the boy's arm, hard enough to make him flinch but not cry out. "Who sent you? Are you spying on me?" Eduardo growled through clenched teeth. "No one sent me, I swear," Gabriel replied, not breaking eye contact. "I have a gift. Always had it. I see what others don't see. I feel what others don't feel. My grandmother said it was a gift from God, but here at the hospital they call me nosy." Eduardo let go of the boy's arm, confused. He was exhausted, 3 days without proper sleep, worried sick about Isabella. "And what do you think you know about my daughter's illness?" he finally asked. "It's not what I think, it's what I know," corrected Gabriel. "Your daughter was poisoned. Not on purpose. It was the new allergy medication she's taking, the one the doctor prescribed. He didn't know. It's not his fault." Eduardo felt the blood drain from his face. Isabella had indeed started a new treatment for respiratory allergies just over a month ago. "How do you know that?" Eduardo's voice was quieter now, almost a whisper. "Because of Donna Nosa. She was head nurse here until last month. Got fired because she found out this medicine was harming a lot of people, especially kids. She tried to warn them, but no one listened." Eduardo looked around again, checking to see if anyone was watching them. "And where is this Donna Nosa now?" "She lives in the suburban rail area in Paris. I can take you there, but it has to be now before—" Gabriel stopped abruptly, his eyes locking on a point behind Eduardo. "Mr. Mendonça, is everything all right?" It was Dr. Oliveira, returning with a clipboard. "Is this boy bothering you?" Eduardo hesitated for a moment, looking from Gabriel to the doctor. "No, doctor. Everything's fine. He just offered me a coffee." Dr. Oliveira narrowed his eyes at Gabriel. "You shouldn't be here, boy. Junior volunteers only come on Wednesdays and Saturdays." Gabriel lowered his head in submission. "Sorry, doctor, I'm leaving now." Before walking away, however, the boy turned to Eduardo and whispered, "I'll be outside, at the bus stop. If you want to know more, meet me there in an hour." Eduardo watched the boy walk away while the doctor continued talking about new tests and international specialists who could be consulted, but Eduardo's mind was elsewhere. What if that strange boy was right? What if there was something the doctors weren't seeing? Dear listener, if you're enjoying this story, be sure to hit the like button and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Continuing. An hour later, Eduardo stood at the bus stop in front of the hospital, feeling completely out of place in his Italian suit. People stared at him, likely recognizing him from business magazines and social columns. Gabriel was there, just as he'd promised, sharing a packet of cookies with a skinny dog. "Didn't think you'd come," said the boy, jumping to his feet. "I don't know why I'm here," Eduardo replied honestly. "I'm probably making a mistake." "You're not. But we need to hurry. There's a bus to Paripé in 5 minutes." Eduardo laughed incredulously. "A bus? I don't take buses, boy." "And how do you plan to get there? Is your driver going to take you to the outskirts without asking questions? Or do you want to call a cab and let more people know where you're going?" Eduardo realized the boy was right. If something really was wrong with Isabella's treatment, he needed to be discreet. Besides, his daughter was stable, sedated for the tests. He had a few hours before she woke up. "All right," he agreed reluctantly. "But I hope this Dona Nosa of yours really knows something." The trip to Paripe was a surreal experience for Eduardo, the crowded bus, the jolts. He felt exposed, vulnerable, but at the same time anonymous. No one there seemed to care who he was or how much money he had. He watched Gabriel interact naturally with several people, greeting them, asking about their families. The boy seemed to know half the city. "How did you meet this Dona Nosa?" Eduardo asked when they found 2 empty seats in the back of the bus. "She took care of my mom when I was 8. My mom had problems." Gabriel hesitated. "Drinking problems and other stuff. Dona Nosa was always kind, gave me food when I was waiting at the hospital. Then my mom passed, and I kept coming by now and then to earn some cash and get something to eat. That's when I met Dona Zephyr. She let me help with the cleaning." "You live alone?" Eduardo asked, realizing he'd never talked so much with someone from such a different reality. "I live with my Aunt Jurema and 5 cousins, but it's like I live alone." Gabriel shrugged. "She works in 2 households and only comes home to sleep. The older ones have their own lives. Only Pedrinho, he's 6, pays me any attention." Eduardo nodded, unsure of what to say. He thought of Isabella, in her huge bedroom in the mansion in Alphaville, with all the toys and gadgets money could buy. Yet she often said she felt lonely. They got off the bus on a busy avenue. Gabriel led Eduardo through increasingly narrow streets until they reached a modest house with an exposed brick wall and a small, well-kept garden. "This is it," said Gabriel, clapping at the gate. "Dona Nosa, it's Gabriel." A black woman with grey hair tied in a bun appeared at the door. She wore a simple printed dress and slippers. Her face lit up when she saw Gabriel, but her expression shifted to suspicion when she noticed Eduardo. "Gabriel, boy, what are you up to? And who's this man?" "Dona Nosa. This is Uncle Eduardo. He needs your help. His daughter is sick at São Rafael, same symptoms as those other cases you found." The woman's demeanor changed instantly. She looked around as if checking if they were being watched. Then she opened the gate wider. "Come in, quickly. It's not safe to talk out here." The house was small inside, but impeccably clean and organized. Family photos adorned the walls, along with framed certificates. Dona Nosa led them to a small living room with a floral fabric sofa and a shelf with porcelain figurines. "Please, sit," she said to Eduardo, who complied, feeling awkward on the low couch. "Dona Nosa, I'm sorry to bother you, but this boy says you know something about what might be happening to my daughter." "Gabriel usually knows things," she answered enigmatically. "Tell me about your daughter. What are the symptoms?" Eduardo described in detail everything that had happened to Isabella in recent days: the sudden fainting, intermittent fever, strange rashes, extreme fatigue, joint pain. And yes, he confirmed that she had recently started taking a new allergy medication called Respirol. Dona Nosa's face grew serious. "That's exactly what I feared," she said, getting up and going to a small adjacent office. She returned with a folder. 3 months ago, we began seeing various patients, mostly children and teens, with similar symptoms at São Rafael. At first, the cases seemed unrelated, but I began noticing a pattern. All of them had started treatment with Respirol 1 to 2 months before the symptoms appeared. "And what did the doctors say?" Eduardo leaned forward. They didn't see the connection. The cases were handled by different specialists at different times. But I, as head nurse of pediatrics, saw them all. When I compiled the data and showed it to Dr. Oliveira, he said it was a coincidence that I didn't have enough qualifications to make such claims. Eduardo closed his eyes for a moment. He knew that kind of arrogance well. And what happened after that? He insisted. I went to the administrative director, Dr. Cavalcante, showed him my records. He promised to investigate. Nothing happened. A week later, I was called to HR. They said there were staff cuts, restructuring. After 28 years at the hospital, they let me go with minimal severance and a cold thank you. Eduardo felt rage building inside. This story sounded painfully familiar in the corporate world he lived in. Do you have proof? Documents? Records? I have copies of everything. She opened the folder, showing charts, tables, meticulous notes. But no one wants to hear a retired nurse against a pharmaceutical giant. Eduardo flipped through the folder. The numbers were alarming. Over 30 cases in 3 months at San Rafael alone. And which company manufactures this drug? Pharmaceutical Progresso, a subsidiary of Vital Pharma. Eduardo felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. Vital Pharma was one of the companies under the TechLife Group, of which he was president and majority shareholder. The acquisition had been made just a year ago, a diversification move recommended by the board. Are you okay? Asked Donna Nosa, noticing Eduardo's sudden paleness. Yes, I just need to make some phone calls, he replied, trying to keep his composure. Would you allow me to borrow this folder? You can take it. I have other copies stored in safe places, she replied with a slight smile. I learned to protect myself after what happened. Eduardo thanked her and stood up. Gabriel, who'd been quietly listening in the kitchen while eating a piece of cake offered by Donna Nosa, approached. So, uncle, are we going to save your daughter now? The simplicity of the question contrasted with the complexity of the situation. Eduardo looked at the boy, then at Donna Nosa, and finally at the folder in his hands. What he would do next could destroy part of the empire he had built. But Isabella's life was at stake, and possibly the lives of many other children. Yes, Gabriel, we're going to save my daughter, and maybe many others. On the way back to the hospital, Eduardo made several calls. First, to his ex-wife, Louise, who had lived in London since their divorce 3 years earlier. She was shocked by the news, and promised to catch the first flight to Salvador. Then he called his personal lawyer, Leonardo, requesting that he urgently gather independent specialists in toxicology and pharmacology. I want them to investigate everything about Respiral, he instructed. Side effects, clinical trials, approval at Anvisa, everything, and with absolute discretion. Finally, he called his personal assistant, asking her to cancel all his appointments for the next few days and not to mention the real reasons to anyone at the office. Gabriel observed everything attentively, impressed by Eduardo's change in demeanor. The man who had seemed broken by despair now acted with determination. You're really important, huh? The boy commented as they returned to the hospital in a taxi. I'm just a man trying to save his daughter, Eduardo replied, looking out the window. After a moment he added, but yes, I have resources, and I will use all of them if necessary. Back at the hospital, Eduardo went straight to the pediatric ICU, where Isabella was admitted. Dr. Oliveira intercepted him in the hallway. Mr. Mendonça, we were worried. You left without informing anyone. I needed to resolve some urgent matters, doctor. Eduardo cut him off. How is my daughter? Stable, but without significant improvement, the doctor replied. We're considering starting a new treatment with stronger immunosuppressants based on the hypothesis of an autoimmune disease. Eduardo took a deep breath, trying to control his anger. He now knew that such treatment could worsen Isabella's condition. Doctor, I want to immediately suspend the use of Respiral. The doctor looked surprised. The antihistamine? But it's not related to the current condition. It's only for managing a previous allergy. Even so, I want it suspended. Eduardo insisted, "and I do not authorize the start of any immunosuppressive treatment until we have more conclusive results." Dr. Oliveira frowned, visibly displeased. "Mr. Mendonça, with all due respect, you don't have medical training to—" "No, I don't," Eduardo interrupted. "But I've hired a team of independent specialists who will arrive tomorrow for a second opinion. Until then, only supportive treatments. And I want the complete medical records and results of all tests to send to them today." The doctor paled slightly. "As you wish. It is your right to seek a second opinion. I'll arrange the copies of the documents." When the doctor walked away, Gabriel, who had waited discreetly at the end of the corridor, came closer. "You were awesome. Did you see his face?" he said with an admiring smile. "Gabriel, I need you to stay away for now," Eduardo said quietly. "Things are going to get complicated, and I don't want you involved anymore." The boy's smile vanished. "But I was the one who helped you. I want to see the girl get better." "I know, and I'm very grateful. But now it's dangerous. I promise I'll keep you informed." Gabriel crossed his arms, upset. "I don't trust the doctors here. They'll try to fool you again." Eduardo thought for a moment. "Do you have a phone, some way I can contact you?" "I have an old cell phone my aunt gave me. It only works for calls." Gabriel wrote the number on a piece of paper, and Eduardo put it in his pocket. "I'll call you tomorrow to update you, okay? Now, I need to be with my daughter." Reluctantly, Gabriel agreed and walked away. Eduardo watched him leave the hospital, wondering how such a young boy could be so sharp and brave. In the following 2 days, the situation evolved rapidly. The team of independent specialists, led by Dr. Carolina Vasconcelos, a renowned toxicologist from USP, confirmed the suspicions. Resperol contained a compound that, in people with a certain genetic predisposition, could trigger a severe autoimmune reaction. It was exactly what was happening to Isabella. Louis arrived from London, and after the initial shock upon learning the situation, she joined forces with Eduardo. Despite their turbulent divorce, they had always stood together when it came to their daughter. "How didn't we notice this earlier?" Louis lamented as they watched Isabella sleep, already having started the correct treatment. "We're her parents. We should have protected her. We trusted the doctors, the laboratories, the system," Eduardo replied, feeling the weight of guilt. "I never imagined something like this could happen." "Eduardo," Louis said hesitantly, "your lawyer told me about the connection with Vital Pharma." He nodded tensely. Leonardo had confirmed the worst. The pharmaceutical company Progresso had withheld important data during Resperol's clinical trials, presenting only favorable results to Anvisa. Worse still, they had identified the potential problem, but decided to proceed, calculating that the number of adverse cases would be small enough not to significantly affect profits. "I've already started proceedings to remove the entire Vital Pharma board," Eduardo said. "And I've ordered the immediate recall of Resperol from the market." "That's going to cost you millions," Louis observed. "I don't care," he replied sincerely. "No amount of money is worth Isabella's life, or any other child's." On the morning of the 3rd day, when Isabella began to show the first signs of improvement, Eduardo received an alarming call from Dona Nosa. "Mr. Eduardo, Gabriel is missing," she said, her voice trembling. "His aunt came looking for him. He didn't come home last night." Eduardo felt a chill. He immediately thought of calling the number Gabriel had given him, but Dona Nosa had already tried, without success. "He disappears sometimes, spends the night on the street when he argues with his aunt, but he always shows up here or at the hospital in the morning. I'm afraid that—" She hesitated. "That someone found out he talked to you." Eduardo promised to help. He looked at Louis, who could see the concern on his face. "What is it?" she asked. "Remember that boy I told you about? He disappeared." Louis frowned. "You think it's related to all this?" "I don't know, but I'm going to find out." Eduardo asked Leonardo to hire private investigators to search for Gabriel. He also contacted Paloma Santos, a respected investigative journalist with whom he had maintained a good relationship over the years. despite some critical articles she had written about his companies. "I need your help, Paloma. But I can't explain everything over the phone. It's about a corruption case in the pharmaceutical industry and a missing boy." "Sounds like the kind of story I'm interested in," she replied. "Where shall we meet?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please remember to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel. That really helps us, especially as we're just starting out. Continuing. Paloma and Eduardo met at a hotel cafe, a neutral place far from the hospital and corporate headquarters. He told her everything about Isabella, about Respiral, about Donna Nosa, and especially about Gabriel. "This boy risked a lot to help me," Eduardo concluded, "and now I fear he's in danger because of it." Paloma took notes throughout the entire account, occasionally asking incisive questions. "Do you have proof of all this? The data manipulation? The nurse's unfair dismissal?" Eduardo handed her a folder with copies of everything he had gathered, including reports from the independent specialists and internal documents from Vital Pharma that his legal team had accessed. "I'm willing to go public with all of this," he said, "but first I need to find Gabriel." "I understand your concern," said Paloma, flipping through the documents, "and I must admit I'm impressed by your attitude. It's not common to see a businessman of your stature expose problems in his own company. This stopped being about business the moment I saw my daughter in that hospital bed," Eduardo replied seriously. "And it got worse when I realized other children, without the resources I have, might be suffering the same or worse." Paloma nodded. "I'll publish a preliminary article tomorrow, without mentioning the boy yet, to avoid putting him at greater risk, but I'll use my contacts to try to locate him." "Thank you. And there's one more thing I'd like to ask. I want Donna Nosa as a consultant for a new project, an independent drug and treatment monitoring institute. Do you think she'd accept?" Paloma smiled for the first time during their conversation. "You really have changed, haven't you, Mendonça? Yes, I believe she would, especially if it means other children won't go through what your daughter did." Back at the hospital, Eduardo found Louis in the hallway with a worried expression. "What happened? Did Isabella get worse?" he asked, alarmed. "No, she's stable. But Dr. Oliveira brought a strange document. An authorization for an experimental procedure he says is crucial. When I questioned him, he got evasive and said he'd return when you were present." Eduardo felt the anger rising again. "Where is he now?" "He was called to an emergency, said he'd be back in an hour." Eduardo went straight to Isabella's room. The girl was sleeping, her color better than in previous days. Her vital signs were also improving. He held her small hand between his, feeling a wave of love and protection. Dr. Oliveira appeared almost 2 hours later, accompanied by another doctor. Eduardo didn't. "No. Mr. Mendonça, this is Dr. Camila Ferreira, a pediatric immunology specialist. She's proposing an innovative treatment that could significantly speed up Isabella's recovery." The doctor, a young woman with a serious expression, greeted Eduardo and Louis with a brief nod. "Your daughter's condition is more complex than it appears," she said. "The damage caused by Respiral can be permanent if we don't act quickly with this protocol," she said, extending a multi-page document. Eduardo took it but didn't start reading right away. "Dr. Ferreira, do you work at this hospital? I've never seen you before." "I'm an external consultant," she replied, slightly uncomfortable. "I was called in specifically for this case." "Called by whom?" "By me, of course," Dr. Oliveira interjected. "I know Dr. Ferreira's work from international congresses." Eduardo exchanged a look with Louis, who seemed equally suspicious. "Has this treatment already been tested on other patients who had a reaction to Respiral?" "It's a new protocol," Dr. Ferreira admitted, "but the results are promising." Eduardo leafed through the document, paying attention to the fine print. On the last page, he found what he feared. The laboratory responsible for the experimental protocol was a subsidiary of Vital Pharma, the same group that produced Respiral. You really think I'm going to authorize the same company that poisoned my daughter to now use her as a guinea pig? Eduardo said, his voice calm but filled with restrained fury. Dr. Oliveira paled. Dr. Ferreira maintained her composure, but her eyes betrayed her nervousness. Mr. Mendonça, there's a misunderstanding. This protocol, there's no misunderstanding at all, Eduardo interrupted. I want both of you out of this room now. As of tomorrow, my daughter will have a new medical team at another hospital. That's premature, protested Dr. Oliveira, transferring her now. The greatest risk to my daughter right now is having doctors compromised by interests other than her health, Eduardo replied. Please leave before I call security. When the doctors left, Louis looked at Eduardo with an expression of surprise and admiration. I've never seen you like this. So protective. I've never seen myself like this either, he admitted. I think I'm learning from a certain street kid. That night, after staying with Isabella, Eduardo returned to his apartment for a quick shower and a change of clothes. He had barely entered when the phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, Mr. Mendonça? The voice on the other end was young, female, and scared. Yes, who is this? My name is Juliana. I'm a friend of Gabriel's. He told me to call from this payphone if he didn't show up by today. Eduardo's heart raced. Do you know where he is? I'm not sure. The voice hesitated. He said he was going to sneak into São Rafael last night. He wanted to get a document from the office of the bald doctor. He said it was important to help the rich girl. Bald doctor? You mean Dr. Oliveira? That's him. Gabriel said he saw him hiding some weird papers after talking to a man in a suit who wasn't a doctor. He said it had to do with the girl and other sick kids. Eduardo felt a chill. Juliana, I need you to tell me exactly where you are. I'm sending someone to pick you up right now. 20 minutes later, a car brought Juliana to Eduardo's apartment. The girl, who couldn't have been more than 12, looked scared and amazed at the luxury of the place. Gabriel said you were rich, but I didn't think it was this much, she said, looking around. Juliana, I need you to tell me everything Gabriel said before he disappeared, Eduardo asked, ignoring the comment. The girl took a deep breath. Gabriel's always been kind of weird, you know. He says he sees things, feels things. At first I thought he was lying, but he's always right. He always knows when someone's lying, when something's wrong. He has a gift, Eduardo agreed, remembering Gabriel's own words. Yeah, and since that nurse Donna Nosa was fired, he got obsessed with the sick kids. He said there was something wrong with a new medicine. No one paid attention to him, right? Who believes a street kid? Then he saw your daughter arrive and said it was his chance to prove he was right. And what happened yesterday? He found me at the plaza, all excited, said you had listened to him, taken him seriously. But he was also worried. Said he heard the bald doctor talking on the phone about hiding evidence and silencing the nurse for good. Eduardo felt a knot in his stomach, and he decided to sneak into the hospital to get that evidence. Yes, he knows all the entrances and exits. He's even slept hidden in the hospital before. He said he'd go in through the laundry, then up the service elevator to the 3rd floor, where the doctor's office is. And why didn't he come to me before doing that? Juliana shrugged. That's just how Gabriel is. He acts on his own. But he made me promise that if he didn't come back by this afternoon, I'd call you and tell you everything. Eduardo picked up the phone and called Leonardo. I need you here now. Bring your friend from the federal police. We have a situation. While he waited, Eduardo offered food to Juliana, who accepted without hesitation. Watching her eat ravenously, he wondered how many meals the girl usually missed. He thought of Gabriel, his determination and courage, how he had risked everything to help a girl he didn't even know. And now he was possibly in danger because of it. Leonardo arrived accompanied by Police Commissioner Rodrigo Almeida, a serious, middle-aged man. Eduardo told them everything from the beginning. We have reason to believe this boy, Gabriel, is missing because he discovered evidence of fraud in the approval of Respiral, he concluded. and he may be held somewhere against his will. The commissioner listened attentively, taking notes. This is serious, Mendonça. We're talking about potential criminal concealment of side effects, clinical trial fraud, and now the kidnapping of a minor. If all this is true, a lot of people are going down. I don't care who goes down, as long as we find Gabriel and other children aren't harmed, Eduardo replied. I have resources, I have evidence, and I'm willing to go all the way. We need to act carefully, Rodrigo warned. If we move too fast, they might destroy evidence, or worse, if the boy really is with them. Eduardo understood the implication and shivered. What do you suggest? A coordinated operation at the hospital, Vital Pharma's headquarters, and the homes of those involved, all at once. But I need a warrant, and for that, I need to present solid evidence to the judge. We have the evidence, Eduardo assured him. Internal company documents, Dona Neusa's testimony, the independent specialist's reports, and now Juliana's account of Gabriel's last words. The commissioner nodded. I'll mobilize my team and speak to the on-call judge. With luck, we'll get the warrants today and move in at dawn. When Rodrigo and Leonardo left to begin preparations, Eduardo turned to Juliana. You were very brave to come find me, he said. I can arrange a safe place for you until this is resolved. Juliana shook her head. I need to go back. My grandma will worry if I don't come home, and if Gabriel comes back, he'll look for me there. I understand, but promise me you'll be careful and call me immediately if you hear anything about Gabriel. The girl promised. Eduardo sent her home with his driver and instructions to ensure she arrived safely. Back at the hospital, Eduardo found Isabella awake, talking with her mother. Seeing his daughter conscious and speaking, even with a weak voice, brought a wave of relief that nearly made him cry. "Daddy!" she exclaimed with a tired smile. Eduardo hugged her gently, careful not to disturb the tubes and sensors still connected to her. "How are you feeling, my love?" "Tired and so hungry," she replied, making both parents smile. "Mom said we're going to another hospital tomorrow." "Why?" Eduardo exchanged a look with Louis before answering. "Just so you can have even better doctors, sweetheart. Doctors who'll make sure you get better as fast as possible." Isabella seemed to accept the explanation. After a few minutes of light conversation, she suddenly became serious. "Daddy, Mummy told me a boy helped discover what I had. Is that true?" Eduardo hesitated. He didn't want to scare her with the full story. "Yes, it's true. A very special and brave boy named Gabriel. I want to meet him to say thank you," Isabella said sincerely. "He saved my life, didn't he?" "In a way, yes," Eduardo replied, feeling a lump in his throat. "And I promise I'll find him so you two can meet." Later, when Isabella fell asleep again, Eduardo told Louis about Gabriel's disappearance and the planned operation for the next day. "My God, Eduardo, this is much bigger than we thought," she said, shocked. "Do you think they'd really hurt a street kid?" "I don't know. But I'm not taking any chances. Commissioner Rodrigo is competent and discreet. If Gabriel is anywhere in the hospital or Vital Pharma's properties, they'll find him. And if they don't?" Eduardo had no answer for that. The thought that Gabriel might be... No, he couldn't even consider that possibility. "We'll find him," he said with more conviction than he truly felt. The night was long and tense. Eduardo received a call from Rodrigo confirming that the warrants had been issued and that the operation would begin at 5 a.m. He decided not to try sleeping. Instead, he stayed by Isabella's bedside, watching over her sleep and thinking about everything that had happened over the past few days, how drastically his life had changed in such a short time. A week ago, he'd been just a successful businessman worried about acquisitions, mergers and stock prices. Now, he was at the center of a criminal investigation, about to expose corruption in one of his own companies, and desperately concerned about a street boy he'd met only 4 days earlier. At 4:30, he received a message from Rodrigo asking him to leave the hospital quietly with Isabella and Louis before the operation began. A private ambulance was already waiting to transfer them to the Albert Einstein Hospital in São Paulo. where a trusted team was ready to receive Isabella. The transfer went smoothly. At 5 a.m. sharp, as the ambulance was en route to the airport, where a private jet would take them to São Paulo, Eduardo received confirmation that the operation had begun simultaneously at São Rafael Hospital, Vital Pharma's headquarters in Salvador, and at the homes of Dr. Oliveira, Dr. Cavalcante, and the director of Progresso Pharmaceuticals. "Keep me informed of any developments," Eduardo asked Rodrigo, "especially about Gabriel." "I will," the commissioner promised. "Now focus on your daughter. Leave the rest to us. I'm going to São Paulo." Isabella slept most of the time, still exhausted from what her body had endured. Louis alternated between moments of relief, seeing her daughter getting better, and worry about the whole situation. "What's going to happen to your companies after all this?" she asked at one point. "Won't this destroy everything you've built?" Eduardo reflected for a moment. "Maybe. It might destroy part of it. The shares will certainly fall when the story goes public, but I'm willing to rebuild. Differently. This time. More ethically, more consciously." Louis observed him curiously. "That's not what you told me when I asked you to work less and spend more time with us. You said it was impossible to build an empire by being nice." "I was wrong," Eduardo admitted. "And you were right. Maybe if I'd listened to you, we'd still be together. Let's not go down that road." "Now," Louis said, looking away, "it's too late for us. I know, I'm just acknowledging that I've learned some hard lessons these past few days." The silence that followed was interrupted by Eduardo's phone ringing. It was Rodrigo. "Mendonça, we found Gabriel." Eduardo's heart raced. "Where? How is he?" "He was locked in a file room in the hospital's basement. He's dehydrated and scared, but otherwise seems fine. We found him thanks to a cleaning staff member who heard banging from inside the room." Eduardo closed his eyes, feeling a wave of relief so intense it almost made him cry. "Thank God. Can I talk to him?" "Not yet. He's being examined by doctors and then will be formally questioned since he's a key witness. But he asked about you and your daughter. He seems genuinely worried about her. Tell him Isabella is well, that she really wants to meet him, and that as soon as this is over, I'll come see him personally." "I will. Oh, and Mendonça, we found the documents he mentioned. Gabriel managed to hide them in his clothes before being caught. They're internal test records that clearly show the pharmaceutical company was aware of the serious side effects of Respirol in at least 2% of patients, but hid that information from Anvisa." "And what about those involved?" "Dr. Oliveira is in custody, as are Dr. Cavalcante, and 3 Vital Pharma executives. We're tracing emails and calls. The conspiracy seems extensive." Eduardo thanked him and hung up. He looked at Louis, who had been listening attentively. "They found him," she said with a relieved smile. "That boy is really special, isn't he?" "More than we can imagine," Eduardo agreed. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, be sure to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps those of us just starting out. Continuing. In the weeks that followed, the case gained national attention. Paloma published a series of reports detailing the Respirol scandal, revealing how a medication with severe side effects had been approved through manipulated trials and influence over doctors and authorities. Gabriel's story, the street boy who helped expose the scheme, moved the nation. Isabella fully recovered after 3 weeks of treatment at the Einstein. When she was discharged, the first thing she asked for was to meet Gabriel. Eduardo had stayed in contact with the boy by phone, ensuring he was well cared for as the case unfolded. The meeting between Isabella and Gabriel took place in the garden of Eduardo's mansion in Alphaville. The girl, still a bit pale but with bright, curious eyes, watched the boy approach shyly, accompanied by Donna. "Nusa, so you're Gabriel," said Isabella, extending her hand. "The boy who saved my life." Gabriel blushed, uncomfortable with the recognition. "I just did what anyone would have done," he replied, accepting the handshake. "No, you did what few would have had the courage to do, corrected Eduardo, stepping closer. You risked your own safety to help someone you didn't even know. And ended up locked in a basement, Gabriel joked, finally at ease. But it was worth it. You look great, way better than the last time I saw you. Isabella smiled. I'm almost brand new. The doctor said if the treatment had taken a few more weeks, it could have been much worse. The conversation flowed naturally. Isabella wanted to know everything. How Gabriel discovered the connection with Respirol, about his gift, about his life in the hospital. Gabriel, in turn, was fascinated by Isabella's books and knowledge. While the children talked, Eduardo spoke with Donna Nosa about the Pharmaceutical Oversight Institute he was setting up. I want you to be the operations director, he said. No one knows hospital backrooms and warning signs better than you. It's a tempting offer, Mr. Eduardo, replied Donna Nosa, but I don't have the academic background for such an important position. You have something far better, experience and integrity. The Institute will have PhDs and technical experts, but it needs someone like you to guide them on what truly matters, patient safety. After some hesitation, Donna Nosa accepted. Her first suggestion was that the Institute create a program to identify and support children like Gabriel, who showed special talent for observation and connecting facts. These young people will be the eyes of the health system in the most vulnerable communities, she explained, places where problems are often ignored or hidden. Eduardo agreed immediately. The idea aligned perfectly with his new vision for the role of his companies in society. Meanwhile, Vital Pharma underwent a complete restructuring. All executives involved in the scandal were fired and faced criminal charges. Eduardo appointed a new board, made up mostly of doctors with impeccable ethics, with a mission to review all the company's products and establish testing and approval protocols even stricter than those required by Anvisa. The financial cost was immense. Tech Life Group's stock plummeted initially, and several contracts were cancelled. But Eduardo didn't regret it for a second. Isabella's life was saved, other children would not be exposed to Respirol, and he had found a new purpose. Louise, surprisingly, decided to postpone her return to London. The experience of almost losing her daughter and seeing Eduardo's transformation made her reconsider some of her choices. Not that a romantic reconciliation was possible, that chapter was definitely closed, but a new kind of partnership in raising Isabella was beginning to take shape. Isabella, in turn, developed an unlikely friendship with Gabriel. Despite social and life experience differences, they found common ground. Both were observant, sensitive, and, in a way, lonely in their worlds. Eduardo hired private tutors for Gabriel, who showed sharp intelligence and a thirst for knowledge. 1 month after Isabella's discharge, Eduardo received a phone call from Rodrigo, the federal police chief. Mendonça, the executive's testimonies are revealing a conspiracy much bigger than we imagined. There are signs that at least 3 other recently approved medications followed the same pattern of trial manipulation and authority co-option. Which medications? Asked Eduardo, feeling the weight of responsibility. We're checking that now. But I wanted to inform you that your name was completely cleared from the investigations. It became clear you had no knowledge of what was happening behind the scenes at Vital Pharma. That doesn't absolve me of moral responsibility, Eduardo replied. I was the group's president. I should have supervised operations better. Well, your actions after discovering the problem make up for anything prior. How many CEOs do you know who would risk their own fortune to denounce illegal practices in their companies? Eduardo didn't respond directly. Instead, he asked, what's Gabriel's legal situation now? I'm concerned about his long-term well-being. That's what I also wanted to talk about. His aunt was interviewed and, well, she didn't show much interest in regaining custody. In fact, she seemed relieved to have one less mouth to feed. That's terrible, commented Eduardo, though not entirely surprised based on what Gabriel had told him about his family situation. Yes, but it opens up possibilities. The juvenile court judge signaled he would look favorably on a request for temporary custody, given the bond Gabriel has formed with your family and the role he played in saving your daughter. Eduardo felt an unexpected emotion upon hearing this. The idea of becoming responsible for Gabriel hadn't consciously crossed his mind before, but now that Rodrigo mentioned it, it felt natural. Would that even be possible, considering my recent involvement in this scandal? In fact, your recent history is precisely what makes the judge favorable. You've shown that you put principles above financial interests, and that you have a genuine commitment to the child's well-being, since you've been funding his education and medical care. Eduardo promised to seriously consider the idea, and to discuss it with Louis, and of course with Gabriel himself. It wouldn't be a decision to make impulsively. That night, after dinner, Eduardo found Isabella and Gabriel in the mansion's library. Gabriel was reading aloud from an astronomy book, while Isabella took notes in a notebook. Both were so absorbed that they didn't notice his presence. "The universe is much bigger than we can imagine," Gabriel said with genuine admiration. "Billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars. And most of those stars have planets orbiting them," added Isabella. "Like Earth." Eduardo watched them for a few minutes, impressed by how naturally they interacted. Isabella had always been a reserved child, struggling to make friends at her elite school. Seeing her chatting animatedly with Gabriel, sharing knowledge and curiosity, was a revelation. "So what are you two up to?" he asked, finally stepping into the library. Both turned, smiles lighting up their faces. "Dad!" exclaimed Isabella. "Gabriel is helping me with my science project. We're building a scale model of the solar system to show the orbits." "Impressive," replied Eduardo, sitting in a nearby armchair. "It looks like you two make a great team." Gabriel smiled shyly, still not entirely comfortable with praise. "Isabella is very smart, Mr. Eduardo. She understands things faster than I do." "That's not true," protested Isabella. "You picked up in 2 days what took me months to learn in school." Eduardo watched their dynamic with curiosity. There was a genuine connection there, a mutual respect rare among children that age. "Gabriel," said Eduardo after a moment of hesitation, "there's something I'd like to talk to you about. Something important." The boy straightened in his chair, suddenly alert. "Is it about the hospital? Did they discover something else?" "No, it's not about that. It's about you, actually." Isabella, sensing the serious tone, closed her notebook. "Do you want me to leave, Dad?" "No, sweetheart, you can stay. In fact, this concerns you, too." Eduardo took a deep breath and then explained the situation, how Gabriel's aunt had relinquished custody, how the judge was open to the idea of temporary guardianship, and how he, Eduardo, was seriously considering assuming it. "But only if you want it," Gabriel concluded. "It's a big decision that would change your life. You'd come live here, continue studying with private tutors, and later, when you're ready, you could attend the same school as Isabella." Gabriel remained silent for a long moment, his face unreadable. He finally asked, "Would I be like your son?" The question caught Eduardo off guard. He hadn't thought of it exactly in those terms. "Well, legally, I'd be your guardian, more like a tutor, but in practice—" Eduardo hesitated, realizing the importance of the moment. Yes, it would be like having a son, with all the responsibilities and privileges that implies. Gabriel's eyes filled with tears that he tried to hide by lowering his head. "I've never had a real father," he murmured. "My mom said he left before I was born." Eduardo stood and approached the boy, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I know I can't replace your biological father, Gabriel, and I won't pretend to, but I can offer you love, education, and a chance to become the extraordinary person you already are." Isabella, who had been watching quietly, hugged Gabriel. "Say yes, Gabriel. It would be amazing to have you here. It'd be like having a brother." Gabriel looked at Eduardo, still hesitant. "And Donna Neusa. She's been taking care of me since this all started." Donna Neusa is aware of everything, Eduardo assured him. In fact, she was the one who suggested I consider formalizing the situation. She'll still be present in your life, of course. I've already invited her to be your educational mentor, in addition to her responsibilities at the Institute. Gabriel smiled for the first time since the conversation began. So, she approves. Completely. She said you deserve a chance she could never give you alone. The boy went silent again, processing everything. Finally, he looked up, meeting Eduardo's eyes. I accept, Mr. Eduardo, but on one condition. What is it? That you let me help at the Institute too. I want to find other kids like me, kids no one listens to. I want them to have a chance too. Eduardo smiled, touched by the boy's generosity, someone with so little thinking of helping others. It's a condition I gladly accept. And please, if we're going to be a family, just call me Eduardo. In the following weeks, life at the Mendonça mansion took on a new rhythm. Gabriel officially moved in, occupying a room next to Isabella's. The first days were an adjustment. The boy found the bed's comfort strange, the abundance of food overwhelming, and the nighttime silence without sirens or street fights unfamiliar. Louise, who had extended her stay in São Paulo, became an important ally in the transition. Her sensitivity helped identify moments when Gabriel felt overwhelmed by the new reality. It's not just about material comfort, she explained to Eduardo. It's an entire universe of social rules, expectations, and behaviors that he's never had to navigate before. Eduardo acknowledged the wisdom in her words. With the help of a child psychologist specializing in family transitions, they established a routine that respected Gabriel's roots while preparing him for his new social role. The Pharmaceutical Surveillance Institute, named Gabriel Mendonça Institute, despite Gabriel's protests that the name was too much, began operating 3 months after the Respiral scandal. With Donna Neusa in operational coordination and a team of independent scientists and doctors, it quickly became a benchmark in critical analysis of new medications. In parallel, as promised to Gabriel, they launched the Young Watchers program, identifying and training adolescents from underprivileged communities with an interest in public health. Gabriel actively participated, sharing his experience and inspiring others. The relationship between Eduardo and Louise also evolved into something unexpected. Not a return to marriage, but a partnership based on mutual respect and the shared love for Isabella, and now Gabriel. Louise decided to open a branch of her art gallery in São Paulo, allowing her to spend more time in Brazil without abandoning her career. I never imagined we'd be here after everything, she commented one night as they watched Isabella and Gabriel swim in the pool. A reconfigured family, but still a family. Life is like that, Eduardo replied. Sometimes we need to almost lose everything to find what really matters. 1 year after the whole story began, the Respiral scandal had led to significant changes in Brazil's drug regulatory system. Anvisa implemented stricter protocols with greater transparency in approval processes. Vital Pharma, under new management, became a model of pharmaceutical ethics, with lower profits but a restored reputation. Eduardo, though still at the head of the Tech Life Group, now dedicated a significant portion of his time to the Institute and social causes. The experience with Gabriel had opened his eyes to realities that, as a businessman focused only on results, he had never truly seen. Isabella, fully recovered, became a vocal advocate for safe medications, creating a blog where she shared her experience with other children and teens. Her friendship with Gabriel blossomed into a genuine sibling-like relationship, with the typical mix of complicity and teasing, and Gabriel, the street boy who had risked everything to save a stranger, had found not only a home, but a mission. His exceptional intuition, now supported by formal education and resources, became a powerful tool for identifying patterns and problems that others couldn't see. One Sunday afternoon, as the family relaxed in the garden after lunch, Gabriel suddenly grew serious and thoughtful. "What are you thinking about?" Eduardo asked, noticing the change in his expression. I was remembering the day I spoke to you at the hospital, Gabriel replied. That day, I wasn't absolutely sure about the medicine. I had clues, suspicions, but no concrete proof. So why did you risk so much? Gabriel smiled with wisdom beyond his years. Because I saw in your eyes the same thing I saw in mine when I looked in the mirror. Despair, yes, but also determination. I knew you wouldn't give up until you found the truth if you believed there was a chance to save your daughter. And you were right, Eduardo confirmed. Some people just need a chance, someone to believe in them. Gabriel continued. That's what you did for me. You believed when no one else would. Eduardo reflected on those words. It was true. A year earlier, he likely would have ignored a street boy trying to tell him something important, called security, and seen only a nuisance, not a person. I think we both learned important lessons, Eduardo finally said. You taught me to see beyond appearances, to hear voices we usually ignore. And I hope I've shown you that, with the right resources, your special intuition can change the world. Gabriel nodded, visibly moved. Isabella, who had been listening, approached and sat beside him. You know what I admire most about you, Gabriel, she asked. That you never lost your kindness, even though you had so many reasons to be bitter about life. Kindness is a choice, Gabriel replied simply. My grandma used to say that before she passed away, that we can choose to be hard or kind no matter what life has given us. Louis, joining the group with a tray of juices, smiled at hearing that. Wise words. And look, I've paid expensive therapists in London who never reached such profound conclusions. Everyone laughed, and the conversation drifted to lighter topics. But Eduardo held on to that moment in his heart. Kindness is a choice. Simple words, but ones that had changed the course of many lives. That poor boy who once approached a desperate businessman in a hospital hallway had not only saved Isabella, he had triggered a transformation that rippled outward, from the hospital to the pharmaceutical industry, from the industry to the regulatory system, and most importantly, to the heart of a man who had forgotten what truly mattered, and to the world he now helped to change. As he watched his reconfigured family, Isabella and Gabriel animatedly discussing a new science project, Louise sketching in her notebook, Eduardo felt a deep gratitude for one moment of madness when he chose to trust a street boy, for a second chance to be the man he was always meant to be. Kindness really was a choice, and he had finally learned how to make it. The end. Dear listener, we hope this story touched your heart. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to trust someone unexpected? Share your experience in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more stories that make a difference.